Let me unmute myself. Hola Maite, ¿cómo estás? Feliz domingo.
Hola Luis, qué lindo verte. Feliz domingo.
Igualmente, gracias. And feliz domingo to everyone that is joining us here today. We're coming up on, I guess today is officially the last day of Latino Conservation Week, número 10, number 10. Is that right, Maite?
Así es, el número 10. It's such a joy and it's been such an exciting week.
It has. So Maite, you and I, we know each other. We talk. We're good friends, but maybe the audience doesn't know us, right? I know, I like to kind of stay in the back, behind the scenes most of the time. Today, I'm here in front of the camera, but yeah, the audience may not know who we are. So let's actually introduce ourselves. Would you like to start?
Claro que sí. My name is Matie Arce. I am originally from Ensenada, Baja California, Mexico. I grew up in Southern California. I've also lived in New Mexico, and now my family lives in Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and we are living these past 20 years on the ancestral homes of the Manahoac people. And I live with my husband and my parents, mis padres, who are now living with us, and we're in familia. I'm also the founder and CEO of Hispanic Access Foundation.
Can't forget about that little detail. So
yes, and I almost
go ahead, please. There's a little bit of a delay, so I hope the audience will bear with us, and we're fine. Maite and I are fine with that little delay, but just so everyone knows, there may be a little bit of, we may interrupt each other, not on purpose every now and then, but we'll work with it. Please, Maite.
Gracias, Luis. Yes, it's true. I live in a rural area of Virginia, surrounded by nature, and that's very intentional for me in the last 7 years. And so it's really, one of the impacts is just that I don't have high-speed internet, but I'm still so excited to be here today with you, Luis.
You don't have high-speed internet, but you have a great grandfather clock back there behind you. I love it. So very quickly, my name is Luis Villa. I'm part of the national support staff at Latino Outdoors. I like to say the national support staff because we support a national network of volunteers across the country that are really doing amazing, amazing work and amazing effort at connecting more and more people to the outdoors, to nature, to our environment, and fostering that relationship between people and nature. I'm the executive director at Latino Outdoors. And Maite, you mentioned where you're originally from. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, pero mis papás, my parents, are from Mexico, specifically from the city of Guadalajara. Well, my mom is from the city, and my dad is from a town on the outskirts of Guadalajara called Jalostotitlan. Try saying that 10 times fast. They like to say Jalos for sure, short. So Jalostotitlan, or Jalos, outside of Guadalajara, Mexico. And so those are my family roots. I currently reside on the ancestral homelands of the Yokuts people in the Central Valley of California, today known as Fresno, California. And what else? I use he, him pronouns, él, and I'm happy to be here today to have this conversation with you, Maite, about the past with regards to Latino Conservation Week, the present. As I mentioned earlier, we're wrapping up the 10th edition of Latino Conservation Week, and what a week it's been, and maybe looking ahead a little bit to the future. So I think we can never assume that whoever's watching knows exactly what we know, right? So let's just start by sharing with everyone here today what is Latino Conservation Week. And I'm going to defer to you, Maite, because you were there from the beginning. I've only been here for about half of the 10 years.
Gracias, Luis. Latino Conservation Week began 10 years ago to provide familias, Latina familias, and youth the outdoor recreation opportunities that were near their home. And it also is to demonstrate the Latino community's commitment to stewardship and the protection of our environment. And it also brings together leaders and partners from our communities to support national and local conservation and climate action efforts. And importantly, it informs policymakers, media, and the public of Latino community views on important national and local conservation efforts. Those were the main purposes, principal objectives of Latino Conservation Week when it was created back in 2014.
2014 was the very first edition of Latino Conservation Week. So if you count from 2014 to today, there's been 10 of them. As I mentioned earlier, I've only been here, excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, so I hope the audience will bear with me on that, and you as well, Maite. I've been here for the last 5 editions of Latino Conservation Week. And before that, I was actually doing conservation work abroad in Costa Rica and really involved with restoring watersheds and the forest on watersheds there, and working with the National Park Service there as well in collaboration on different projects. So conservation has been a big part of my professional life. I did that for over a decade in Costa Rica. And it's interesting, when I came back to the States, I fell into the same trap that I think a lot of people do, which is I don't see a lot of Latinos represented in this space. Are there any Latinos that are just as passionate about conservation as I am? And lo and behold, there are. There are many, many, many. And I think that's part of what Latino Conservation Week is about as well, is to really amplify that, right? Our presence in this space and in this movement. And in 2018, when I discovered both Latino Outdoors and Latino Conservation Week, I was just so thrilled for that reason. I see myself represented. So now that we've gone, go ahead. The delay, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Luis. Go for it.
No. I'm going to defer to you, and I promise I won't interrupt, because there was something you wanted to add.
Well, I just wanted to just build on what you said. Is I think in our communities, not just in North America, but throughout, Spanish-speaking communities around the world, our connections to land and water and to the health of our communities has been something that's always been present. Our contribution to their protection has always been important to us. And so it is, it's definitely not that we are not involved in careers or involved in connecting with our natural resources and protecting our familia's health through the protection of the environment and stewardship. I think it is a wonderful outcome of Latino Conservation Week is that we're bringing that to light in a more visible way as a community.
Absolutely. And if it isn't clear to folks watching and folks that have been engaged with Latino Conservation Week throughout the week and throughout 10 years of Latino Conservation Week, if it isn't clear already, Hispanic Access Foundation created Latino Conservation Week, we mentioned in 2014. And I know that Hispanic Access Foundation has different programmatic pillars or priorities. And I'm wondering, Maite, why is conservation one of those programmatic priorities for Hispanic Access?
Well, conservation, the protection of our environment is critical for our health and well-being, as we all know very well. It's so important to our communities, and for Hispanic Access, it's a key way for us to fulfill our mission and vision. The Hispanic Access Foundation mission is to connect Latinos with partners and opportunities to improve lives and create an equitable society. And our team, we are so passionate about a vision in which everyone in our community is enjoying good physical health, a healthy natural environment, economic success, and civic engagement in our community. Really, if that, the more and more that happens in our community, the more we are going to see a better society. So that is why the environment and conservation became, from the very beginning of the creation of our organization, a very important pillar.
That makes complete sense to me. You're preaching to the choir when it comes to touting the health and wellness benefits of having such a close relationship with our natural environment, and not only a close relationship, but one of stewardship and making sure that conservation ethic that is in each of us, we exercise that, right? And we demonstrate how much we value our natural environment. We defend it when we need to, and we show our allyship to it. So Maite, Latino Conservation Week number 10, 2023. Let's go all the way back to Latino Conservation Week number 1 in 2014. Do you have any particular memories, any salient memories from that first edition of Latino Conservation Week that come up for you now?
Yes, I think in the beginning there were quite a few challenges that we were experiencing. It was a very small Latino Conservation Week, the very first one. I think there were maybe 9 events that came together, and it really was initiated out of the Latino community's love for the outdoors and the desire to experience more joyful, fun, active outdoor recreation. And I remember a community organizer, Linda Sosa of San Cayetano Catholic Church in Denver, asked us to help children connect for the first time with the Rocky Mountains and through outdoor recreational activities. And so it was, just having our eyes open to not everyone has these experiences, and there's such a desire in our community for them. And then watching what happens when families connect with the outdoors, and just the strength and power of that was very, very motivating and very inspiring to all of us, and made us realize this is something our community needs and wants. They want a presence in outdoor spaces and more welcoming spaces. So I remember just for us, the discovery of, that joy of our community outdoors and being able to see that in action. And then in response to that, very interestingly, the media, the mainstream media and mainstream conservation community, as not only our organization, but as Jose Gonzalez was, really was out there creating not only the cultura outdoors, demonstrating what cultura outdoors is, and then uplifting those experiences in a powerful way. And the emergence of other organizations like Hecho and Azul and Fresh Tracks and Green Latinos and Corazon Latinos, there was so much activity, growing activity and leadership that was then also uplifting existing activities and leadership in communities. Mainstream media and the mainstream conservation community had a deficit mindset back then about what our community's connection to the environment and our history and our contribution, really thinking the first question typically in a reporter calling us up and saying, oh, we saw this is happening in this national park or this hike or this activity, why are Latinos suddenly interested in protecting their rivers or protecting their public lands or taking hikes, going fishing, going hunting? What suddenly has happened? They were so curious, what is going on here? That deficit mindset was one of the big catalysts as well for us to say, wow, we really need to make sure that our communities are developing and we're helping to uplift their narrative, their true narratives as that grows and changes, so that mindset changes as well.
That is so beautifully put and so powerfully put, Mike. The deficit mindset of the media, mind you, not of the community itself, but of the media. Just the lack of awareness of Latino communities' engagement with nature, with the outdoors, with the conservation movement. We had to go out and kind of create our own platform, right, to really amplify our presence in this space. I remember you mentioned Jose Gonzalez, the founder of Latino Outdoors. I remember he tells the story of how he became driven to create Latino Outdoors, and I think it was prompted by a query, a Google search he did, Latinos in the outdoors, and nothing came up. This was back when he was in grad school, I think. So Latino Outdoors was founded 10 years ago in 2013, maybe 2010, 29, something like that, 2009. And there was nothing. And it wasn't because nobody in the Latino community was engaging in the outdoors or doing conservation work. I mean, I was in Costa Rica doing 10 plus years of conservation work, and I'm just one example. There's so many, right? We had to create that platform, that visibility for ourselves. And I think Latino Conservation Week has been instrumental in doing that over 10 years. So, go ahead, please, yes. Mike.
Yes, I think it was an exciting time for this to happen, but it was also a challenging time for many of us because, there was also, with the initiation of Latino Conservation Week, donors and funders were also saying, they weren't convinced that creating an initiative like Latino Conservation Week was important, and they weren't very supportive of it initially. And so that was also a challenge, is, we had to really lead in the way that our community, to address our community needs and to lead with community and go against the what's been done in the past, and just be true to our mission and our community.
Absolutely. And we're not going to name names with regards to which funders were reticent at the beginning, but I imagine many of those have come around and now at year number 10.
Absolutely.
So speaking of, sort of bumps in the road of Latino Conservation Week, do any other bumps come to mind over the, 10 times that this has happened, that this has been celebrated?
Yes, I think in addition to the lack of resources, which now has changed, those same funders and donors who may or may not have been already, connected to us in the past, there's just so much. Even they are very much in support and understand and call this a movement. But there were so many bumps in the beginning. Communities when they were connecting to the outdoors, to our parks and outdoor spaces through Latino Conservation Week, they didn't always have great experiences because the parks and outdoor spaces were not representative of their histories and their culture and their heritage. And staff, they didn't have staff that understood our communities and how we experience the outdoors in a way that makes us feel welcome. And we also had to practice coming together every year through Latino Conservation Week. And there were all sorts of challenges and successes and learned lessons by all of those who participated. And then I also recall how we encountered racism especially in the first 5 years of Latino Conservation Week, when that was when 5 years into the initiative, the national parks began to uplift the stories of their Latino employees and interns and volunteers in social media. And the comments from the public were often very discriminatory. But now each year, the uplifting of our communities in the parks and in conservation during Latino Conservation Week is met with encouragement and love and celebration.
Yes, and it stands to reason that the broader conservation movement would embrace something like Latino Conservation Week, because it's often been, especially in the last few years, part of the discourse of the broader movement that they want to broaden the movement. They want to diversify the movement. Because we're all part of it. We want a critical mass of communities and people luchando, right, for our planet, for our natural environment, for the protection of our natural resources and our natural places. And so anything that can put us further along that path should be embraced. Something like Latino Conservation Week, as an example. So bumps in the road. What about, we're, again, 10 years of Latino Conservation Week, somewhere along that trajectory, somewhere along that path, have you seen an inflection point, in how, you've touched on it a little bit, right, in how Latino Conservation Week has been embraced or has changed. A particular inflection point or two that come to mind?
Yes, Luis, you and I have talked about this this week, and one very clear big change is that Latino Conservation Week has achieved its objectives. We've seen success and progress and growth in all of our primary objectives for Latino Conservation Week. And I think that that's where we are in terms of where we are now. But during the journey of Latino Conservation Week, I think I'd love to hear what you have seen change. I know that, back in maybe 2017, we began to see culture and heritage being celebrated in the national parks, in our wildlife refuges, in our state parks, with música and art, the arts and comida, and just, our community was very visible, and there were our language was also present with signage and flyers and announcements. So that was very much a change that was very visible at that point. And then we also noticed along the way, or maybe around 2019, communities were asking their elected officials locally to introduce resolutions that recognize Latino Conservation Week in their city or in their county, and even here in Washington, D.C. in Congress. And that's really a result of those community members wanting to give, wanting their elected officials to recognize this initiative in a permanent way for future generations. And that continues to grow as well. And then in 2020, that very important time when the pandemic hit and George Floyd was murdered, our communities needed an inclusive space. And Latino Conservation Week provided a space where community, nonprofit leaders, activists all came together to demonstrate how we connect with our environment as stewards, as athletes, artists, musicians, parents, professionals, so many, and really demonstrated what conservation means to us, but also had that tough dialogue in a way that at that time necessarily wasn't as much in person in local parks as much as it was online through panels and speaking events and charlas. So that was a really important time as well, where we saw a sudden growth in the participation in Latino Conservation Week. And then more, I think we're also looking at Latino community stakeholders and organizations creating more and more nature experiences. I mean, it's just growing, and the way that it's growing, it's showing up in a tremendously versatile and diverse way, depending on the community. And then also funders and donors, as I mentioned, are really supporting and providing the resources to organizations and to communities so that they can continue to connect with the outdoors.
Yeah, all of that is so visible. All of that change towards more representation, the diversity of activities and events around Latino Conservation Week, the voices that we're hearing from all this week. Just this year's edition of Latino Conservation Week is a perfect example of the many voices, the diverse voices that are celebrating this together with us and everyone else. It's been wonderful to see that. It's not just a few people. There's so many, and I've seen that increase every year. You mentioned 2020 as one of those inflection points. I remember going into Latino Conservation Week 2020. I just didn't know how that was going to unfold. I didn't know what to expect, and it ended up being, up until that point, probably the most celebrated, the most active, the most, the Latino Conservation Week with the most events, even though everybody was not meeting up in person. And that was, to me, it was illuminating. It brought into focus for me how important something like Latino Conservation Week is to our comunidades. And it was wonderful to see that in 2020. And then, of course, 2021, 2022, 2023, it keeps growing every year. So I'm pausing just in case you want to add something. And I think your video is freezing. I hope you're still there, Maite. But I'm happy to continue because I have a few more things that I'm happy to talk about. So if you're still there, Maite, just put something in the chat there just so that I know that you can hear me. And if not, I'll continue to riff here. But the other thing I wanted to mention is, and you touched on this, Maite, is the activities, the different activities that, the variety of activities that are taking place every year. It's growing, that variety. And just the other day, I was visiting some of our volunteers, some of the Latino Outdoors volunteers in Denver, Colorado, for our 10-year anniversary, because Latino Outdoors is celebrating 10 years as well this year. Hola, Maite. We're okay. I was visiting Denver, and there was an outing that one of our
Hola,
volunteers
Luis.
organized. Oh, no worries.
Good. Sorry about that.
No worries. We know how it can be in sort of rural parts of the country where the internet is not as robust, I guess, but that's okay. So yeah, I was just mentioning, maybe dovetailing off of what you were saying, the growing variety of activities and events as part of Latino Conservation Week, and just in general, right? Bringing cultura to the outdoors. That's what you said earlier, which really resonated with me. I was learning to dance bachata as part of a Latino Outdoors outing, outdoors in a park in the Rocky Mountains. And I'd never done that before. Well, first of all, I don't think I'd ever taken a bachata lesson. And I certainly have never taken a bachata lesson in the Rocky Mountains, which was fantastic. So just bringing cultura to the outdoors. I know that Jose Gonzalez loves to say he doesn't want to check his cultura at the trailhead. And that is, every year, whether it's Latino Conservation Week or just Latino communities connecting with the outdoors in general, we're certainly not checking our cultura at the trailhead anymore. That's for sure. And just kind of the last bit I want to say about that is, when I was in Costa Rica doing conservation work, there was a quote that really stuck with me. The person who said it his name is Wendell Berry. He's I read a little bit about Wendell Berry when I was doing conservation work in Costa Rica, and he's a farmer, and he's a naturalist, and he's a conservationist, and he's very he's part of sort of the mainstream conservation movement, traditional conservation movement. But I love what he said. He said, you stand for what you stand on, right? And so going back to an earlier part of our conversation here today, Maite, there have been, times where in the past and even today, where our communities do not feel welcome in these spaces that many are calling for everyone to protect. But when we are welcomed to these spaces, and not only welcomed, but our cultura is welcomed to these spaces as well, then we're going to feel a part of that space, and we're going to be more motivated and inspired to protect these spaces and these natural resources. So you stand for what you stand on, and that has always stuck with me.
I love what you said in terms of how you've participated in Latino Conservation Week events and the bachata. I have done both. One of the things I love to do, like go fishing, I've been able to do through Latino Conservation Week over and over, but also do yoga and dance salsa, through like Fairfax County county parks, as well as Montgomery County parks. And then also there's events that are popping up, like painting, plein air painting in Biscayne National Park in Florida. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I wish I was there. So there's so many things that we can do through Latino Conservation Week that we love already, that we love to do, but also so much we can learn and new things we can experience in the outdoors through other people who love these experiences and want to help create them. Latino Outdoors has been such a critical partner, and not just a critical partner because your staff and your ambassadors are truly committed to supporting the health and well-being of our communities and their experience, and making their experiences outdoors be relevant and fun, but also because you're such wonderful people to work with, such great partners. And I do think that back in 2020, when we didn't know what to expect, you didn't know what to expect, we didn't either. Latino Outdoors and its incredible incredibly powerful online community of supporters really just, you know, leaned in to support Latino Conservation Week. And that was a powerful moment for the initiative. And then, I think in terms of what you're saying in how communities are starting to create more welcoming activities and events, the growth in the news media reporting of what they're seeing and is really helping to uplift what people are doing in Idaho and Alabama and Texas and also in South Florida and Southern California and New York. I think we're seeing how they are integrating cultura and our language and our, the diversity of our communities in the parks, and it's just it's an amazing thing, and it's something for us to experience and to observe and to also contribute to, that I believe will continue to expand and to change over time.
Absolutely, Maite. And thank you, first of all, for those kind words about Latino Outdoors. It's been a pleasure to be a partner with Hispanic Access, for 10 years of Latino Conservation Week and beyond. I mean, because we work on other things together as well. So it's a match made in heaven, Hispanic Access and Latino Outdoors. And then a lot of the other organizations that you mentioned earlier as well, Green Latinos and Hecho, Hispanics enjoying camping and hunting and the outdoors. I think that's what it stands for, Hecho. And Fresh Tracks and so many other organizations. So thanks to them, and thanks to our staff, the volunteers at Latino Outdoors, the interns that are part of the Mano program there at Hispanic Access, the young people you place at different land management agencies around the country, federal land management agencies. Everyone that we're talking about is a part of this celebration that we take part in each year, not just for 1 week, but for the entire year, every year, increasing this visibility of Latino communities in the outdoors and in conservation. I'm thinking about just a sampling of the events that I've been aware of this year. I mentioned dancing bachata, learning to dance bachata in the Rockies. We're not just, taking this opportunity, the celebration that is Latino Conservation Week, to learn to dance outdoors. We're doing some other things as well. I know that today, for example, our team in New York, our volunteers in New York, they're doing some wetland restoration at Jamaica Bay. And then earlier, some days ago, you mentioned Florida. We have a group of volunteers in Florida. They helped restore some native plants onto a riparian the banks of a river that flows through a school that is run by an indigenous community inland from Miami. I don't remember what the location is exactly, but inland into Florida. And then, in the Bay Area, I know that our lead coordinator there, Aurora, helped put on a stewardship event that involved removal of invasive species at a preserve in the Bay Area. Boston, our team there, they got into canoes and started removing water chestnut, which is an invasive plant from the Mystic River. So many stewardship events that are happening, and those are just the ones that come to mind and to my mind. And I'm limiting myself to Latino Outdoors because that's what I'm intimately familiar with. But I'm sure you can speak to many stewardship events as well. You mentioned 9 in 2014. 9 in 2014. Do you have a sense of how many events are happening this year?
Well, we encourage partners and groups and leaders to register their events on latinoconservationweek.com so that they can, regardless of whether it's a public event or not open to the public, because then it really tells the story of what activities are there, and most of them are public events, and so it welcomes all to participate. And the website this year, I believe, we were at 288 events by midweek. So I'm sure we are over 300. However, I believe only 50% of the events are actually registered on latinoconservationweek.com. So really, it's a kind of a North Star to give us an idea of how many activities are happening and how many collaborations and partnerships. But it's really much, much more, and that's really exciting to me.
So whatever's on the website, the official website of LatinoConservationWeek.com, that's the website, right? .com, LatinoConservationWeek.com. Whatever's on that website, you just have to multiply it by 2 essentially to get a better sense of what's happening around the country.
Yes, I would say so, and I do think there's also a good breakdown of about half of those on the website are recreation focused, and half of them include stewardship activities like restoration, as you were mentioning. For example, I mentioned early on that Linda Sosa, a very well-known community organizer in Denver, was one of the people who brought us into this work, by giving us the opportunity to engage her community outdoors. And she and the youth group of her church, they knew that adjacent to the property there's a stream, and there's a lot of fallen trees and invasive species, and it was just there was just a very messy outdoor space right next to the church. And they said, we've been watching this. This has been this way for many years. We want to change this. We want to make it something that is really beautiful and healthy, and that the stream is healthy. So they restored that area through this week during Latino Conservation Week. All the community came together, and young people came together with experts and helped remove the invasive species and restore the health of that area. So I think that's just one example of many. I also saw events where people were going to the beach, and part of the experience of enjoying the ocean, they were also picking up trash and making sure there was a stewardship component to the experience of enjoying the outdoors, which I know Latino Outdoors and many of our partners, is very intentional about educating our communities and promoting those practices, and it shows.
Yes, absolutely. It's important, as we've touched on earlier, it's important, first of all, to be able to have a relationship with these places, right, in order to love them and to care for them. And once we have that relationship, at least in our experience at Latino Outdoors, we've seen that blossom into a conservation ethic, an ethic of stewardship. Again, you stand for what you stand on, right? What you're welcomed onto. So I don't know, I don't have a sense of the audience or anything, but I do want to open it up to any questions that the audience may have. I see that there is a question here from Jesus Bañuelos. Is it necessary to be a volunteer? So you don't have to be a volunteer with Hispanic Access or with Latino Outdoors or any organization to participate in these, over, 500 events probably or more happening around the country. All you have to do is go on to latinoconservationweek.com, look for the event near you, and if you want to join, you can do that. Generally, the ones that are listed on that website are open to the public. And sometimes there are events that, for logistical reasons, that maybe they need to have a specific group or number of people registered for them. But generally, they're open to the public, and you just have to visit this website that you're seeing on your screen right now, latinoconservationweek.com, and look for the event that's closest to you to participate. What would you say, Maite? Would you add anything to that? And Maite, oh, go ahead.
Also, in addition to being a participant, you can also lead events on your own, as well as support the organizations that you care about in your community who are doing these activities. So there's so many different ways. And LatinoConservationWeek.com provides a toolkit for community to help look at all of the different ways to engage with Latino Conservation Week.
Yes. The toolkit has been quite prevalent this week. I've seen it in all the messaging and just the resources that the toolkit provides. It's been wonderful amplification and promotion of Latino Conservation Week all this week. So Jesus, that's our response to your question. Of course, it is the tail end of Latino Conservation Week this week. Today is officially the last day. But as we mentioned earlier, we don't need to limit ourselves to 1 week to really celebrate the Latino community's involvement and engagement and passion and love for protecting the environment and our natural places and spaces and resources. So there are many opportunities, 365 days in the year. Let's see what else. So we are coming up at the towards the end of Latino Conservation Week. Any other questions from the audience before we go on to something else? If not, if I see a question pop up on our screen here, we'll answer it. We'll respond. But we are coming up to the end of this edition number 10, número 10 of Latino Conservation Week. Even though today is officially the last day, there are some things happening beyond today, right, Maite? Did you want to go into that? I know there's a photo competition and maybe some other things that you'd like to mention so that our audience is aware. So there's a little bit of a delay, but I'm just waiting for.
Well, yes, I think there's the Latino Conservation Week 2023 photo contest, which ends tonight. And I think you can submit your photos to latinooutdoors.org. And there's also events that continue because it is summertime. And I know that there's a wonderful community in Lawrence, Massachusetts, for example. They're going deep sea fishing in the next few days near their national marine sanctuary. And it's just, these activities, just as you said, will continue throughout the year, and we are here to support and celebrate all year long.
Absolutely. So the photo contest or competition, you can find details about that, as Maite mentioned, on latinooutdoors.org. And just kind of go up to the top menu there and look around there, and you'll see the link to get all the details of the photo competition. You don't need to be a professional photographer to submit your entries. There's different categories. I think there's 3 or 4 different categories, and you can enter all 4 categories. And I think you can even submit up to, if I remember correctly, up to 3 photos under each category. So there's plenty of opportunity to participate. check that out. Today may be the last day, if I'm not mistaken. But please submit your entries for the photo competition. Any other questions from the audience? If there are any other questions, I'm sure they'll pop up and we'll address them if we see them. We are wrapping up Latino Conservation Week 2023. You mentioned the deep sea fishing expedition. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So looking beyond 2023, what do you see, Maite, for Latino Conservation Week número 11, 11, and beyond?
Well, what we've seen, you and I have talked about, and our other partners have seen, is the Latino community is leading. Communities feel ownership of Latino Conservation Week. They are leading, and so I believe that part of what we're going to see is really going to be a surprise. Our communities are going to continue to celebrate in the way that they care most about celebrating. But I'm very, very thankful that there has been such a wonderful partnership in our relationship with the Latino community organizations, national organizations, as we mentioned, as well as our national parks and wildlife refuges and our rivers and administrators of public lands, and city parks and county parks. And I think that the partnership with all of these entities has really made a difference, as well as our partnership and the engagement of elected officials and funders and donors to these organizations and to these parks and to our organizations. So I think that the collaboration will grow in 2024, which I'm very, very excited about. The recognition by municipalities as well as by Congress here in Washington, D.C. will continue to grow and expand and take a new shape that I think will be very important in breaking down the systemic barriers for our communities to connect with local parks and outdoor spaces. I believe that the media, both mainstream and our Spanish-speaking media, ethnic media, is also they're doing some interesting work in writing about this, these activities, this movement, and I think that we'll see a change in that as well. That's going to be very interesting, and I just think that the collaboration overall between our communities locally and nationally will be stronger and stronger. And so I really look forward to that, and also to just the not only participating in the activities, but also experiencing the joy that others are feeling through Latino Conservation Week.
I love the way you responded to that question, Maite. We'll just see how our community surprises, right, in year 11 and beyond. That's always a tough question when I get it. Like, what do you see? You know, what's ahead? So I'm gonna take that response from you going forward whenever I get that question, because at the end of the day, you know, it's impossible to map everything out, right? What we can do, though, is create a platform for our communities to have our voices uplifted and our passions and our commitment to conservation uplifted. And so once we have that platform, that space, what happens after that can be a surprise. And oftentimes it's a wonderful surprise, as we're seeing with each successive Latino Conservation Week, including this year, 2023. What I see is this growth in diverse voices, experiences, expertise, all being celebrated in what we're calling, specifically what we're talking about today, which is Latino Conservation Week, but more broadly, just the idea of diverse voices, diverse community members coming together for something that creates for robust and resilient movements, systems. We see it in nature, in ecosystems. That diversity is so important, right, to creating sustainability and to creating thriving nature and thriving societies. And so I just really want to, as we say in Espanol, hacer hincapié or underscore that importance of diversity in any system. And no court opinion really can change that. So I'll say that much. And do you have any parting thoughts?
Absolutely.
Maite?
Well, I absolutely agree with you, and I think you said it beautifully, Luis. And representation is also a result of all of this collective celebration of our communities outdoors and in this workforce and in protecting nature. I just want to say thank you to all of our partners and to you, Luis, and your leadership and your wonderful team. I'm very grateful. I've been grateful all week in just an enormous way of just, because I'm seeing so much wonder and exploration and amazing experiences by kids, by families, by individuals, and then some wonderful activism as well. So I'm very grateful to all of you. I'm grateful and thankful to be a part of this wonderful community.
Well, we're thankful to be a part of it here with you, Maite, with your colleagues at Hispanic Access and the broader community that joins us for this celebration. And thank you, Hispanic Access, for starting us on this path. We can't wait to do it again next year. Thank you so much to everyone that took a portion of your Sunday to join us today. And we will see you soon.
Muchas gracias. Gracias a todos.